Let me turn this on. Let's see here. Yes, I am getting older. I'm older today than I've ever been in my life. There we go. And you are too. So anyway, even if you're 8 years old, you're older today than you've ever been in your life. So yes, I mean every time I turn around, brother Manning is getting older. You know, so I quit turning around. Yeah. It doesn't work that way. But anyway, here's since I am in my 70s, but early in my 70s. But anyway, I've been running into verses all through the Bible that has to do with old age, and not just talking Ecclesiastes chapter 12. Psalm chapter 92. I'll just read you one here real quick. It says, the righteous shall flourish like the palm tree. He shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon. Those that be planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish in the court, shall still bring forth fruit in old age. Yeah. I love that one. I've got some messages on old age because I'm becoming an expert at it. So I really do. I've got about 4 or 5 messages on old age, and Carter, I almost switched to one of those, but I'm going to stick with the original one. And that's my grandson Carter, not my son, my grandson. One of my 8 grandsons. We also have 3 granddaughters, but he's traveling with us. But yes, I mean we all have to make adjustments because of everything that's going on out there. With the price of gas and everything. My wife and I were headed towards Florida in March, which is our usual time to go to Florida. Well, actually, we usually go there in February, but I had to back it up a month to be in a National King James Bible Research Council meeting where I spoke along with some other guys. And so, we're pulling that big camper. The camper we had is 40 foot long. And we're pulling it out there, and I was telling Brother Manning about it, Mrs. Manning, about it while we were eating, how that on our way out there, my wife and I, the price of diesel, the further east you went, the higher it was. And we pulled that with a diesel pickup truck, okay, 7.3 diesel. So, I mean, we're getting 12 miles a gallon, which is good. But, it's getting more and more expensive the further east we go. So anyway, so on the way out there, we talked about it, and we decided to sell the camper because we want to keep going in the ministry and working and traveling and what have you. And so we talked about it, and I took out a certain amount of money to get us to Florida. I have not asked any of the churches for travel expense money. And I've been doing this since 1995. But I'm thinking, I was thinking as I was traveling out that way, I'm thinking I might have to start doing that. I don't want to. Because, if I'm having trouble financially to make it, I'm sure the churches are too. And but we did sell the camper just a few weeks ago. I was traveling out to Indiana and Illinois to some meetings out there, and my wife sold it while I was gone. So, and that was, that's fine. That was kind of the plan. That was okay. Let her take care of it. I don't want to fool with it. And, but also on the way to Florida, I took a certain amount of money out of my savings for fuel to get us to Florida. When we got to the first church, I had no cash. It was all gone. Okay, that was a strange feeling. Of course, I've got a card and everything, but so anyway, but I knew that I had enough fuel to get me to the next church, and I did sell some books and whatever, and so that helped a little bit. So I decided I'm going to preach in 6 different churches, but one of them, there was no love offering, there was nothing. Okay, so I was there, and that was the National King James Bible Research Council meeting that I'm preaching at. There's no money there. I go there on my own nickel. Okay, it was in Orlando, Florida. So I decided, okay, I'm going to have to repay what I took out of savings. So the first 2 churches that I preached in, there were love offerings, and I took the whole check out of each church and put it back. Okay? The next church, the next two churches that gave us a love offering, now I have to save money to get back home to Texas. So now I got to have fuel money to get back home. So the first two churches, money set aside to repay what I took out of savings. The next two churches, I put that money aside in order to get back, in order to get home. Okay. Finally, the last church, my wife and I were there for a week, and I helped them put some trim. They have a small mission house, and I helped them put trim all the way around. We were there for a week, so I helped him do that, and then preached on Wednesday night and on Sunday, and they were very generous. And I finally made some money on that trip. Okay, and we were on almost 3 weeks total, and so what usually took us $600 in diesel to get Florida back took over $1,100. So. So I've made some decisions, and I am going to start flying more, not only because of finances, but because I'm getting old, and I'm wearing out my trucks, and we got to have transportation when we're home and everything. So anyway, so we're all making adjustments in this thing, but I want to try and encourage you this evening with something from Romans chapter number 1, please. So go ahead and turn to Romans chapter number 1. As I try to find my notes, and I folded the piece of paper, and it's around in there somewhere. Okay. Yeah, but I do have those messages on old age and what have you. So anyway, I'm still trying to find those notes. I folded that piece of paper. Now where did it go? So anyway, you know you're old though when you're bending over to smooth out your socks and you realize you don't have any on. That's when you realize that you know you're old when you do stuff like that. Okay, where is it? There it is. Okay, you know you're old when it takes you longer to rest than it did to get you tired. And so on and on and on with these old jokes, and that's all I have is old jokes. Okay. All my jokes are old. Now let me tell you about this. This is what's called a circuit rider Bible. Okay, and you just fold the flap and then take the thing and wrap it up. So I'm trying to figure out what to do with this long thing while I'm preaching. Yeehaw! But anyway, this is from Church Bible Publishers. Okay, well. You probably know that our church bought Church Bible Publishers. It was in Michigan. Now it's in Longview, Texas. And so if you want a quality Bible, seriously, quality Bible, churchbiblepublishers.com. Okay, now this one was $125. But I did get, earlier in the year, I got a brand new Thompson reference Bible. But if you want one of those, you got to get it quick because for some reason, we're not going to be able to get the print anymore. But all we do at Longview is we put them together. Okay, we don't do the printing. The printing is already done when it gets there. But we put the cover on it and the ribbons and all that kind of thing. So if you want a good quality Bible, that's where you can go. Romans chapter number 1, that was the commercial for the night. And Romans chapter number 1 is what I'm going to be looking at here. But before I read the verses, we all, as Christians, have a mandate from God. And y'all know this. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here at this church because this is a soul-winning church. So you're getting the gospel out to your community. You're doing everything you can. You got missionaries on the wall here that you're supporting and what have you. And but we all Christians, every Christian has a mandate from God. Matthew 28:19, go ye therefore and teach all nations. Right. Mark 16:15, and he said unto them, go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Now that verse, Mark 16:15, he said, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Okay. So somebody, they've asked me through the years, and I've been preaching now I'll start my 48th year of preaching next year. Next year is a big year for my wife and I. Next year, how are you? And I just realized who that is. But anyway, yeah, Next year's a big year for my wife and I, because next year I will have been saved for 50 years.
Amen.
And next year is our 50th wedding anniversary.
Amen.
If she doesn't kill me first. But anyway, so, and you understand that totally, right?
I can understand how she.
Yeah. Notice he hesitated on that. You know, he didn't want to answer that real quick, you know, but anyway. So, you know, Mark 16:15, you know, people try to corner me. They say, well, where should I go? Well, let's just go to all the world. I think that includes Lancaster, Ohio.
Right, exactly.
Okay. The last I looked, Lancaster, Ohio was still part of all the world.
It is.
Okay. When that was given, it was given over in Israel, which meant that this was a foreign mission field.
Right.
Okay. And so there's some people that are saying things like, well, you shouldn't support national pastors out there. Okay. You shouldn't support national pastors out there. Well, I kind of understand that a little bit and reasons why. But you stop and think about it, he's a national pastor. And he should be supported. The Lord has ordained that they which preach the gospel should be supported of the gospel. That's God's plan. That's the way God wants it. Okay. And so, but there's a national pastor in Uganda that I have completely vetted. He's a very trustworthy man, and this man, he sends me things all the time that, you know, they went into a certain village and they had 4,000 people show up to a village to watch the Jesus film, and over 2,000 people got saved that night. He's sending me stuff like that all the time. He's got pictures to verify it. And I've got another man who can verify it, you know, he's in Florida, but he's constant. Now that's a high number, but he's had, you know, he's gone into village and, you know, maybe 60 people showed up and only 40 people got saved. So I'm going to go to Uganda, and I told him, I said, I want you to take me in one of those villages, and I want you to show me how you do that Jesus film, because you're doing a better job than I am. I want to learn from him. Okay. And he also wants to have a conference and everything. And so we're getting in touch with about 40 or 50 national pastors there in Uganda. And Brother Shuf is heading that part of it up the trip. And, but, you know, so there's no wrong place to go. Go into all the world. Okay. Who do we talk to? Well, there's no wrong person to talk to.
Right.
There is no wrong person. Well, you say, but they look like they're saved. What does that mean?
Exactly.
Does it mean because they have a short hair and they're wearing a suit or something, or you know, a business lady is dressed in a dress or whatever? Does that mean, you know, well, they must be saved, so I'm not going to talk to them? You don't know if they're saved until you talk to them.
Right.
And there's no harm in going up to somebody and they're already saved.
Right.
And you try to talk to them. There's no harm in that. Okay. So there's no wrong place to go, and there's no wrong person to talk to, according to Mark chapter number 16. But you and I, what do? We pass people all the time. We pass them up. We just pass them up. We're busy. We're doing things. We're going someplace and all that. But there's no wrong place to go, and there's no wrong person to talk to. Now, there are hard places and hard people. Jesus found that to be very true. In Matthew 13:58, and he did not many mighty works there because of their unbelief. So Jesus himself would go into an area and get people saved and help people, but he went back to this area, his own hometown area, and because of their unbelief, there wasn't much that he could do.
Right.
Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Now, no matter how tough the area, we're still supposed to go.
Right.
I'm going to Uganda. 71, almost 72 years old. I'm going to Uganda and to Kenya. I was talking to the missionary today that I'm going to be working through, and I told him, I said, you know, when I get there in September, I will almost be 72 years old. And this is what he said. Oh. And I heard that little doubt in his voice, you know, you're coming here and you're going to be almost 72. And this is what he said. Do you think you can handle it? Well, I don't know. I travel all over the country now and I do pretty good. I mean, you know, I could die tomorrow. I hope not, because if I do, I'll be speechless. It surprised me so much. But no matter how tough the area is, we're still supposed to go. No matter how tough the circumstances are, we're still supposed to go. No matter how unbelieving the people are, we're still supposed to go. No matter how hard the person is, we're still supposed to go. Moses did not allow Pharaoh's hardness to stop him. He still went to Pharaoh. Jesus did not hesitate to do in a hard place what he did everywhere else. He still went. Paul still witnessed to Agrippa regardless of the outcome, where he said, almost I was persuaded me to be a Christian. And so, what have you got to lose?
Right.
Just go wherever and talk to whomever.
Good. Yes, sir. It works.
And if that includes getting on a plane and going over to Uganda, Africa, so be it. I really did. I debated this thing for about a month and a half. Should I go? I am 71. That is old to me. and the Bible even verifies that. Because the Bible talks about there'll be 70, man shall have 70. Well, that's 70. And then if by reason of strength you hit 80,
Right.
which is 80, yet there's going to be labor and sorrow. Well, that's encouraging. I hit 70, but if I make it to 80, it's because of strength. But you're going to be miserable doing it. Thank you very much. But notice it doesn't say anything in that verse about 90. That's even more encouraging. He stops talking about at 80. No, that's just, I'm only 8.5 years away from that. I guess heaven's not such a bad place to go to. Well, I'm not ready to go yet. They say that God will give you dying grace. I ain't got it. I don't have it. Not ready to go. I got things I want to do. But Paul here in the book of Romans, I'm going to start reading at verse number 8. Romans chapter number 1, verse number 8. First, I thank my God through Jesus Christ for you all, that your faith is spoken of throughout the whole world. I told Carter, I said, you're going to hear some familiar things, because I preached from this section of verses in another message that he's heard in the past week traveling with us. But I said the beginning part will be familiar, but the last part won't, okay? So just hang in there. You go to sleep for the first half, okay? And then wake up when I tell you to. But anyway, he almost tried to kill me today. He dropped his fork on the floor, and then he traded my fork with his fork.
It was awesome.
Wow, thank you. You're not my favorite grandson anymore. But anyway.
He's building your immune system.
He's building my immune system for my trip to Uganda. There we go. That's the way to look at it. Because they don't have the cleanest utensils over there, if they have any at all. But anyway, I did learn how to eat with my fingers in India. No, not doing it. But anyway, I'm going to buy my own forks and spoons and take them with me in my new backpack that I'm going to buy. Oh boy. Now anyway, but here he is. He's talking to the Christians in Rome. He said, your faith is spoken of throughout the whole world. So people have already heard about the Christians in Rome. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that, and I'm going to get into it. It says, for God is my witness, whom I serve with my spirit in the gospel of the Son, that without ceasing I make mention of you always in my prayer. So he says this. He said, we've heard about your faith. He said, and God is my witness. God knows what I'm going to tell you is the truth. I've been praying for you since I've heard of you. I've been praying for you and make a mention of you always in my prayers. And then he said, this is my request, making request, verse 10, if by any means now at length I may have a prosperous journey by the will of God to come unto you. And that's how I feel about Uganda and Kenya. I've got a guy in Kenya who, a national pastor, he said, you need to come to Kenya. I want you to come to Kenya, okay? And I think he wants me to come to Kenya, so I'll buy him a motorcycle. Because he showed me a picture of it already and how much it is. But I'm not taking that much money with me. But anyway, it's only $1,500 for a brand new one. and he could use it.
Oh, yeah.
Because the roads there are horrible, and trying to get to the villages and doing everything that he wants to do, it's difficult. So if I can raise that money, we'll see what we can do. But he said, I make a request that I may now, if by any means now at length I may have prosperous journey by the will of God to come to you. For I long to see you, and I do long to see these people in Uganda and Kenya. For I long to see you, that I may impart unto you some spiritual gifts, the end you may be established, and that's our goal. We want to go there and help them spiritually and with scriptures and everything. Verse 12, that is, that I may be comforted together with you by the mutual faith, both of you and me. We should be believing and teaching the same things.
Right.
Verse number 13, now I would not have you ignorant, brethren, that oftentimes I purposed to come unto you, but was let hitherto. In other words, he couldn't make it. That I might have some fruit among you also, even as among other Gentiles. Last year, I was supposed to go to Zambia. Last year, I was supposed to go back to Zimbabwe. And last year, I was supposed to go to Uganda. All 3 trips got canceled because of this COVID mess. Okay? So please pray that this COVID mess goes away, so we can get over there and do the things we've been wanting to do for the past year and a half. Man, I had tickets already paid for. Somebody else paid for them. And I had a voucher, but that voucher ended in March. Never got to use the tickets. So the Kuwaiti Airlines or whatever, they got all the money. But anyway, now, he said, I don't want you to be ignorant about this thing. I've oftentimes purposed to come unto you. I want to come to you. And so here's a phrase, verse number 14, very familiar phrase. I am debtor, both to the Greeks and the barbarians, both to the wise and to the unwise. So as much as in me is, I'm ready to preach the gospel to you that are at Rome also. Now, so he said, verse number 14, I'm a debtor. This reveals his heart. This reveals his motivation. I'm a debtor. I have a whole message about I'm a debtor. And I read about instances in history where people were actually burned at the stake. If you've ever read Fox's Book of Martyrs, it's a tough book to read through all the way through. I've read a lot of way through it, and I just had to stop because it was depressing. All the things that people before us had to go through. So I'll finish it someday. But this was his heart. This was his motivation. He felt this was his duty, and this was his responsibility. I'm ready to preach the gospel to you. I'm a debtor. I owe this to those who have died before me. I owe this to Jesus who gave his life on the cross. I'm a debtor. This is something that I owe. This is something that I need to do because I owe this to you people. Now, there's another little phrase here that caught my attention. But before I look at that phrase, I want you to go back to 2 Corinthians chapter number 11. 2 Corinthians chapter number 11. 2 Corinthians chapter number 11. I'm going to start reading at verse 22. 2 Corinthians 11:22. Verse 22. Paul writes under inspiration. He writes, "Are they Hebrews? So am I. Are they Israelites? So am I. Are they the seed of Abraham? So am I." He's answering some critics about him. Okay, this is what was happening here in this thing. And he said, so he asked those questions. He said, I'm a Hebrew. I'm from Israel. I'm of the seed of Abraham. We're the same there. Verse 23, are they the ministers of Christ? I speak as a fool. I am more. Listen to the things that Paul had to endure. He said, as soon as I find it, in labors more abundant, in stripes above measure, in prisons more frequent, in death oft. So he kind of sounds like he's bragging when he said, are they the ministers of Christ? I speak as a fool. I am more. I am more of a minister of Christ than what they are. What gives him the right to say that? Well, he begins explaining it. Look at it again. in labors more abundant. In other words, he was in more labors than they were. Okay. He was in stripes above measure. In other words, more than they were. In prisons more frequent. In deaths oft. Of the Jews, 5 times received I 40 stripes, save one. So 5 times he was beaten, 39 times with a cat of 9 tails or a whip of some sort. 5 times. 5 times 39 is a whole lot of lashes for your body to have to endure. This was done 5 times, 5 separate different times, but that's what he endured. And then he goes on. At verse number 25, thrice or 3 times was I beaten with rods. Once was I stoned outside of Lystra. Remember the story? He was stoned outside of Lystra. What did he do when they stopped? They thought he was dead, but he wasn't dead. What did he do? He got up and walked right back into Lystra. Shows some intestinal fortitude in that man, because he went right back into town where the people were that tried to stone him to death. So he was stoned. Thrice I suffered shipwreck. A night and a day have I been in the deep. In journeyings often, in perils of waters, in perils of robbers, in perils by mine own countrymen, in perils by the heathen, in perils in the city, in perils in the wilderness, in perils in the sea, in perils among false brethren, in weariness and painfulness, in watchings often, in hunger and thirst and fastings often, in cold and nakedness. Beside those things that are without, that which comes upon me daily, the care of all the churches. He said, I'm more of a minister than they are, because these are the things that have happened to me more than what they have. Go with me to Philippians chapter number 4. I'm just going to throw this one in. Philippians chapter number 4, a totally misused verse, I think, is chapter 4, verse number 13, which says, I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. And I myself have used that for a long time, meaning completely something other than what it said, what the context of the verse is. Okay? So let's look at Philippians chapter number 4. And let's see, the verse number 9. Those things which ye have both learned and received and heard and seen in me do, and the God of peace shall be with you. But I rejoice in the Lord greatly, that now at the last your care of me hath flourished again, whereof you were also careful, but you lacked opportunity. So he's beginning to talk to them about how they wanted to help him financially, but were not able to for a while. But now they're finally able to do that. Are you with me with this? Okay. Look at verse number 10 again. But I rejoice in the Lord greatly, that now at the last your care with me hath flourished again, wherein you're also careful, but you lacked opportunity. Not that I speak in respect of want. Okay. But I have learned in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content. Now, when it says in whatsoever state I am, it's not talking about Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, Florida, whatever. Okay. But so he said, you wanted to take care of me, but you weren't able to. But now at the last, you've been able to. And I rejoice in God in that. Okay. But he said, there's something that I've learned. I've learned that whatever state I am in, therewith to be content. What is he talking about? Verse number 12. I know both how to be abased and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry. This is the state that he's talking about. And both to abound and to suffer need, I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. Okay. So for a long time, Brother Manning, I used that verse to say, well, I can make it through college. That's not what it says. That's not at all what it's talking about. No. And so, and I've heard other preachers use it similarly, and it's just not correct. Paul is saying, you wanted to take care of me, but you couldn't. But now you're able to. He said, but even without that care, I've learned something. I've learned to be content. Now let me fill in the blank here using verse number 12. I've learned how to be content whether I'm abased or whether I abound. I know how to be content everywhere in all things. I am instructed. I know how to be content when I'm full and when I'm hungry. I've learned how to be content when I abound and when I suffer need. I can do all those things
Right.
through Christ, which strengtheneth me. So here's Paul. He's been beaten. He got on 3 ships and they sank. And I think every time he walked down the dock, whenever that ship owner saw him coming down the dock, they said, please don't get on my ship. Because every time you get on one, it sinks. Okay, now that's Mannology. I can't prove that. Okay. But a night and a day in the deep, he had to tread water. A night and a day. Have you ever tried to tread water with nothing around you? No life preserver, no piece of wood, nothing? That's how we lost a lot of men and women in war out in the oceans. They had to tread water. They had to keep their head above the water and not swallow that salt water, let it get up their nose and coughing and hacking, and pretty soon they can't do it anymore. They drown. But a night in the deep, a night and a day was in the deep, treading water, trying to stay alive. Can you imagine? I don't know how old Paul is in Romans chapter number 1, but I think he's on the way to Rome. And he's not going on a pleasure cruise. He's been arrested.
Right.
Okay? And so here he is towards the end of his life then. And if I'm wrong on this, please correct me. But, because I haven't studied that part of it out, but I think that's what's happening here. But he said, you know, with all that he had gone through, what condition must his body have been in? What condition must he have been in physically? Okay? I've never been beaten with rods. Well, except my mom did. No, they didn't use a rod, they used their hand. They didn't use a switch, they didn't use a belt, they used their hand, okay? On the ulterior, what is it? Posterior. Yeah, there we go. I mean, I have been hit with sticks. Okay, somebody get mad at me and whack. You know, it stings. When I was a kid, I had a whip, and I would try to snap that thing, right? And every now and then, instead of snapping it would snap you, and you'd get a welt on your arm or your back or something, right? Have you ever been hit by a whip? I mean, yeah, it stank, man. Paul got beaten with whips 5 times. And each time was with 39 stripes. What kind of scars did he have on his body? Jesus was beaten with a whip also. And in part 1 of the Psalms, it says, I can look on my bones and tell them. They say that those men became so proficient at whipping people, especially if it had sharp objects tied in the end of it, when they hit them on the back, it would wrap around and they would give it a jerk and it would just tear the flesh open. And there were times when people would get beaten like that and they could literally see their intestines and the inside of their body because of the beating. And the Bible says Jesus' visage was marred more than any other man. So they hit him with a whip 39 times. Paul had that happen 5 times. His eyesight was bad. And here he is towards the end of his life. He's heading towards Rome, and he said, I'm a debtor, and I'm going to preach the gospel to you at Rome also. Now, here's my message. That's all the introduction. I've got about 5 minutes, and I'll be done. If I can remember what I was going to say. It'll take me 5 minutes to remember it. But look at back to Romans chapter number 1, verse number 15. Here's the verse that got me. Or here's the phrase that got me. Because again, I'm older than I've ever been in my life. It's funny. It's true. I have a back situation, and I have had since a teenager. So I got out of the Navy after being in for 5 months and 10 days because of my back as a teenager. You can imagine what it's like now. I mean, it's hurting now, right now. And when it starts hurting like this, I just run out of energy. But that's nothing compared to what Paul went through. Nothing at all. One of the reasons I ride a bike is because when I was in the hospital, Naval Hospital on Great Lakes Naval Station, back in 1969, they told me, they said, Gary, Seaman, Mann, they said that there's two kinds of exercises for people with a back like yours that you should do. He said, but at first he said, let me tell you what never to do. Don't run. Don't jog. Don't get in marathons. Okay? Because that's where your bones, and this is what he did. He said your bones do this. And you don't need that with your back. Second piece of advice he gave me is he said never get weight out front. Because if you get weight out front, it pulls your spine inwards. And you don't want that. He said, now the two best exercises for a person in your condition is number 1, swimming, and number 2, riding the bicycle. Because you're in that embryo position. Okay? And swimming, there's none of this going on, and everything. So that's one reason I ride a bike, because I can't afford a swimming pool. So I did swim the other day with Carter, and it wore me out. But here's the phrase that I caught, verse number 15. So as much as in me is. So as much as in me is, I'm ready to preach the gospel to you that are at Rome also. With all my scars, with all the things that I've had to learn and to be content whether I'm full or whether I'm hungry, whether I'm abound or whether I'm abased. The beatings, the scourgings, the night and the day in the deep, the shipwrecks that I've been in, being hit with a rod, the care of all the churches. I'm going to Rome, and it's probably the last thing I'm going to do. But I'm telling you what, the last thing I'm going to do, I'm a debtor. And I'm going to preach the gospel to you there at Rome also. So as much, let me put it in my own words, as much as I have left in me, I'm ready to preach the gospel to you there at Rome also. As much as in me is, I'm ready to go. So no matter where I am in life, I'm ready to go. No matter how much energy I have left, I'm ready to go. No matter what my abilities are or are not physically, I'm ready to go. No matter what my limitations are, I'm ready to go. It doesn't matter how old I am, I'm a debtor. It doesn't matter how qualified I am, I'm a debtor. It doesn't matter how I feel about it, I'm a debtor. It doesn't matter how educated I am, I'm a debtor. So as much as in me is was whatever I have left, I'm ready to go. Ready to go. This is my declaration as a 71-year-old man. So why in the world are people just giving up in church when they think they're old? I would love to retire. I can't afford it. We're debt free, but I cannot afford it. It's crazy. Thank you, Joe. Can't afford it. sorry, Uncle Joe. And I don't talk politics or religion, but anyway. Yes. So who are we debtor to? I'd love to retire, but I'm not going to. I have an agreement with my wife. We remember the last time that I saw John R. Rice preach. I remember it. And it was not too long before he died. But there was also a time, and please, Dr. Rice, forgive me for telling this, but there was also a time when he was preaching that he soiled himself while preaching. If I ever get to that point, I'm done. I'm done. But I've been thinking about doing a podcast for over a year. I got some encouragement recently from a good friend of ours, son, who bought me a really good microphone. He paid for a professionally made logo. And I bought myself a new wood lathe so that when I'm not able to travel anymore, I can still study this book, come up with outlines, get on my podcast, and I can still be teaching people. And by the way, I've only had 4 episodes so far, and so far I'm in 11 different countries.
Good.
I still want to stay busy for him. He went all the way to the cross for me. I can go all the way till the day I die for him. Who will join me? Who will join me? If Paul can go all the way through what he went through, if Jesus can go all the way through what he went through, then we ought to spend the rest of our lives, not in full-time service for him, not necessarily, but living for him.
Right.
And getting the gospel to people wherever we can go and however we can. Father, thank you for the day. Thank you for loving us. And that is my declaration. That's my proclamation for the rest of my life. With whatever I have left. And I'm nobody special. I don't have superpowers. I'm tired. I hurt. But you did so much for me. The least I can do is literally go until I can't go anymore. And then figure out ways that I can still get the gospel out, still support missions, and do all that we can while we have the opportunity. Lord, we know you're coming back soon. Because it's not conspiracy theorists that's talking about a one world government. It's the government talking about a one world government. It's not wacko fundamentalists that's talking about a one world financial system. It's the world talking about a one world financial system. We know we're getting close, but we don't have time to lay down and quit. We don't have time to retreat. There are people in Uganda, there are people in Lancaster, there are people in the towns all around here, out in the villages, out in the country, that do not know the Savior. Waiting for somebody, praying for somebody possibly to come and talk to them about it. So I pray, Father, that we will spend, all of us will just determine in our hearts to give you the rest of our lives. Thank you for the example that we see in Paul and the ultimate example we see in your Son. And I pray in Jesus' name, amen.
Ask you to stand together if you